Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an all-new Ram It Down Your Throat, where Blaine and I discuss the hot topics of the day. Kicking it off today, we're going to be talking about the draft, and the first question is, did the Rams do enough to help Jared Goff in the draft? Blaine, you say yes.
Yes, I think they did. Helping Goff was obviously the focal point. I think just because they used their second round pick on a big pass catching tight end, and then in the third round they go after Cooper Kupp, and then they take the kid from Texas A&M to help down the field. So clearly helping Goff and giving him some weapons to throw the ball to were obviously, I think, focal points. And even though they didn't have a first round pick, I think they accomplished that goal.
I'm going to say no, because I think it all starts up front, and even though guys were pulled in the offseason, there's no guarantee that that unit's going to gel or that all those guys are going to work or even that some of those guys are going to be healthy. John Sullivan, good as he may be, he has major health concerns. So I think it starts up front. And there were a lot of people who were really curious about why the Rams didn't address the offensive line, especially when a guy like Forrest Lamp fell to them two different times, and they passed on him both times. And look, I'm not saying that Ingram wasn't a fantastic pick, but you ask me which guy I'd have picked, it would have been Forrest Lamp.
I mean that makes sense and everything. I was also confused why they didn't take a guy like Forrest Lamp, but then you hear a guy like Snead and McVay talk about after the draft that they already invested all these picks on offensive linemen 2 years ago when they took Jamon Brown and they took Rob Havenstein, and then they bring in a guy like Sullivan to play center, and I believe they picked up two guys in undrafted free agency. So I mean, it's not like they didn't have options. And I mean, the Rams have had absolutely nobody at wide receiver or tight end after they lost Quick and Britt in the offseason, and then they also lost Kendricks
last year. Like, they spent a fourth-round pick on a guy that everybody wanted them to draft, a guy who is considered one of the most athletic tight ends in the draft in Tyler Higbee. And then they used their first pick on a tight end.
Like, I mean, you look at Higbee's production, though. He didn't do anything last year. So, I mean, McVay is going to want to bring in his own guys, and Everett fits exactly the mold that McVay wants in a tight end.
As much as I understand that, this guy is a pass-catching option, and that's all he is. He's not a blocker. He's not a guy that they're going to be able to put in there and expect him to provide an extra layer of protection. At the end of the day, tight ends not named Gronkowski simply do not have the kind of impact in the league that warrants the Rams passing on a guy like Lamp to pick up a guy like Ingram. Look, Ingram is a fantastic pick, and we'll see what happens with him. We'll see how it plays out. But if I'm making that pick, I'm taking Forrest Lamp.
I mean, and what does Forrest Lamp do for you? Where does he slot in? The Rams have a solid five. I wouldn't say solid, but they have five guys that are there on the offensive line. Where's his fit? I mean, they needed weapons for Goff. Everett is 6'3", 240 pounds. He's going to be a mismatch for any defense.
So is Tyler Higbee, who they just drafted last year, and they drafted two weapons for Goff.
And I mean, Higbee wasn't McVay's guy, though. Everett is.
Okay, but your argument for burning the pick on Ingram just because he's McVay's guy doesn't sit well with me when it's a tight end. Like, I can understand if they use this number one pick on like a top wide receiver or a top running back like a Joe Mixon or something like that. Like, you would be able to sway me on that. but I don't give a crap if it is McVay's guy. Getting a tight end when you had top offensive linemen available right then and there, and you were still able to get guys like Josh Reynolds and Cooper Kupp, you could have addressed the offensive line and the weapons for Goff situation. And you could have signed an undrafted free agent tight end. And
what does an undrafted free agent tight end do for you right now? They have a guy like Tamara.
Okay, let me ask you this. What does Ingram do for you? Because no tight end in the league tends to come in and have a historic rookie season. So what you're talking about is a guy who's not likely going to make an impact until 2018 or beyond.
The Rams don't need to make an impact until 2018 because they're not winning this year anyway.
Okay, so if you're not winning this year, then why not build toward the future? If that's your case, hey, we're not winning now, the only logical reason is, well, we're building toward the future. Here's why an offensive lineman. John Sullivan is 33 years old, and if he goes down, you don't have a left tackle. Andre Whitworth. John Sullivan is 31 years old and is constantly going down. Forrest Lamp can play center. Like, Greg Robinson did not work out at left tackle, so now they're going to move him over to right tackle. If that doesn't work out, you still have a guy like Forrest Lamp. Like, there are 1,000,001 reasons why Lamp would have been a better pick than a tight end in that situation.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from on that. Like, it does all start up front. But, I mean, I guess what you have to look at is
couldn't run the ball at all.
Fix it all in one offseason. You're not going to fill every single hole, especially with how many holes the Rams did have. I mean, the main focus had to be putting skill guys around Goff in order to be able to have his confidence in the passing game, and drafting a guy like Everett does that.
I think at the end of the day. Let me take a look at this. All right. So, excuse me, I've been calling him Ingram. It's Everett. Pardon me. I don't know why I've been saying Ingram. But you take a look at where Everett was slotted to go, hold on. Let me just pull up this little bitty. Okay, so you're telling me that Everett out of South Alabama is going to be the impact player. Like, the guy is 6'3". He's more of a dude. He's a wide receiver. He's the same size as Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, I mean, if they can bulk him up and
add what 3 inches to make him an actual tight end, they're clearly going to use this guy as a receiver. I
mean, how he was used at South Alabama, he was used at the end of the line. He was actually a decent blocker. He is a hybrid tight end wide receiver, which is a mismatch for any linebacker or slot corner that any defense were to put on him.
Sure, on the offensive side of the ball, but most people I've talked to about this guy, when I do get his name right, and I apologize for that again, but most people when I talk to about him, it's not like this guy lights it up in blocking drills, and he's definitely a guy that you draft as a pass catching option more so than a traditional tight end. Now, I don't have a problem with that. And this guy had some incredible measurables, you know. He put up some impressive numbers, which is exactly why this is a second-round guy, even out of South Alabama. The numbers that he put up, 3-cone, etc. I mean, the guy's impressive athletic across the board, but he's still more of the same. He represents the same thing as Tamarick Hemingway, as the same thing as Tyler Higbee. And whether or not it's his guy, it's still more of the same. The Rams addressed helping out Jared Goff with 2 receivers, and a guy like Cooper Kupp and in a guy like Josh Reynolds.
I agree. Cooper Kupp was a great pickup. He most solid hands in the draft, precise routes. He's I think a complete receiver. And then Josh Reynolds has the over the top, beat the defenses vertically ability.
Yeah, and you know, you look at these, then they went defense with a couple of picks in there as well. Obviously, outside linebacker, defensive tackle. What I thought was interesting too was the 6th round pick of Sam Rogers out of Virginia Tech. When you talk about helping Todd Gurley, giving him a fullback, it's
I thought it was an interesting pick just because the fullback has died in the NFL.
right.
But I mean, it looked like from what I've watched anyway, that he was more than just a fullback. He can catch the ball out of the backfield and do things that route as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, they pretty much teach him to do everything at Virginia Tech, so there's no doubt the guy probably has some skills. But let's move on. Would you give the grade higher or lower than a B-? You say yes. What the Rams have received the lowest draft grade in the NFL, according to several draft experts. I'm looking at you, Mel Kiper Jr. Did Les Snead do a poor job for the first time as the top guy in the draft room? Would you give him a grade higher than a B-? You say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I mean, I think NFL, the draft grades at the end of the day are pretty stupid because you can't really tell what a player is going to do until at least year 2 or year 3. But I mean, if you just look at the Rams' needs before the draft, you know that they did at the end of the day give Goff weapons. That they did at the end of the day get some pass rushing depth there with the kid from Eastern Washington and then the kid from Pitt. So I mean, at the end of the day, they addressed needs where they wanted to. Maybe they reached on a player here and there, but until we see how well they play, we're not going to know what the exact grade is. But I mean, just looking at first glance, Snead did get needs, and they seem like quality players with a quality character, and it seems like those are the types of players that could end up changing the culture.
And that's exactly why I would not give him a grade higher than a B-, is because we have no damn clue how these guys are going to work out. So if you start with the actual grading system as it's intended to function, where 70% C is average, and you say, okay, at the minimum, the Rams addressed basic needs. So we start with, all right, we both agree that they earned a C. All right, we also think that they did pretty well in some spots, drafting some guys that maybe traditionally wouldn't have been there in other drafts. So we like those, but then there are a couple of other draft picks where either you or myself are shaking our heads, so we have to kind of reduce it. Now, I feel like anything above a B, and you're starting to speculate into the future because, like you said, if you give a draft class an A, you're just assuming everybody's going to go out there and kick ass. Like 1 through 7, like they're all going to make the roster. They're all going to have an impact. Like, or that of the 7 guys taken, at least 5 are going to contribute to the team in a meaningful way. Maybe would be a different way to look at that. But, listen, it's 2017. These guys haven't taken the football field at all. For all we know, Tyler Higbee could be better than Everett ever could hope to be, and ends up demolishing. And he and Tamarick Hemingway do just fine, and Everett never sees the field. Or perhaps Everett teams up with Higbee and you get sort of a Gronk and that other guy back when he played with the Patriots. But you get a dual tight end set where it's just impossible for defenses to guard. But I gotta go with no, because I don't think you can judge these guys beyond now. And right now, it looks like it's better than average. But I think that there were a couple of question marks. So better than average would be either a C plus or a B or a B minus. Or a B. I opted to give it the B minus simply because I scratched my head at the fullback and I scratched my head at Everett being the pick.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I can respect that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not going to know what these players are going to end up doing. But I mean, you look at a draft like 2012 with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they get guys like Bruce Irvin, Bobby Wagner, and Russell Wilson, and the draft experts give them a D, and they end up being the core to their whole Super Bowl run. So I mean, I think we just don't know what these players are going to end up doing. And I mean, looking at it, the Rams address needs, and I mean, I can at least be happy. I can be happy from that standpoint that they did do that. Maybe they reached on a guy like Everett, but until we know how he fits in McVay's system, if he balls out for 800 to 1,000 yards in his first year or two, I think that would be a success. But at the end of the day, we just don't know what they're going to do.
All right, so back to where we were. Next question on the docket is: should the Rams retire Steven Jackson's number? Jackson was the Rams for a while, man. Like, this guy gave his all to the Rams. And even if he isn't honored in other ways, you've still got to find a way to honor this guy within the organization, because there was a period there where the Rams weren't playing the best of football, but that guy was still busting his ass, man. Like, and it's really hard to come to work each day when the guys around you blow, and you know that you're wasting your best years at a franchise that couldn't win a bologna sandwich in a pie eating contest. Like, not only should the Rams retire Steven Jackson, but they should do a lot more than that. Like, Wall of Fame, Ring of Honor, all that stuff, man. Like, he's earned it.
I mean, I agree. He's one of the greatest players in the franchise's history. He gave the team his all throughout arguably the worst stretch of any franchise's history of all time. And I mean, growing up, he was the Rams for me. He was my favorite player. But I mean, as far as retiring his jersey goes, at some point you have to, I guess, pick and choose whose jerseys you retire, because there's only so many numbers.
Sure. And I think the concept
he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's just he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. Like Isaac Bruce. Isaac Bruce's number is retired. He's a Hall of Famer. Marshall Faulk's number is retired. He's a Hall of Famer. At some point, you have to pick and choose. I mean, if you put Jackson,
this guy, 11,000 yards, 11,000 nearly 500 yards, and 69 touchdowns as a Ram rushing. And then he add another 9 touchdowns. So he's got a total of 78 touchdowns, and you add another 3,683 yards receiving. So this guy's got at least 15,000 yards and 78 touchdowns as a Ram, and you want to not retire his number?
No, because he's not. At the end of the day, he's not a Hall of Famer. You can put him on the Ring of Honor, you can put him on the Wall of Fame or whatever. But I mean, when it comes to retiring numbers, you have to pick and choose, because at the end of the day, you only have so many numbers. You have to pick and choose, and at the end of the day, Jackson's just not a Hall of Famer, and I think that's where retiring jersey numbers, like, that's, I think, should be one of the main qualifications there.
They retired Jim Everett's number?
I don't believe so. I'll look it up.
Because if Jim Everett's number is not retired,
I don't think they did. I think it's Jackson. No, not Jackson. It's Falk. Falk. It's Merlin Olsen.
Yeah.
Bob Waterfield, Marshall Falk, Eric Dickerson, Merlin Olsen, Deacon Jones, Jackie Slater, Isaac Bruce, and Jack Youngblood.
Well, Hall of Fame guys. All right. Fair enough. Like Sykes says, I've heard it both ways.
True.
I've heard it both ways. I have heard it both ways. In honor of Guardians of the Galaxy's movie release, which this Thursday, in a fight, would you take the Guardians of the Galaxy or the Legends of Tomorrow? Well, I'm going to take the Guardians, but for one specific reason. Rip Hunter is absolutely useless. Like, Rip is beyond worthless.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a man. I think Gamora has her hands full with what's her bucket from the League of Assassins?
The White Canary.
White Canary, yeah. I also think, what's her name? Hot Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hot Girl. You know, that would probably be an interesting fight. I suppose that she would have to take on Rocket as the sort of like animal versus animal deal. Now here's where you enter into like, see, by sheer numbers, Legends of Tomorrow would have them, but there's been so many incarnations of Guardians of the Galaxy that if you added dudes like Yondu or Mantis or, I mean, just crap, any of the billions of characters that have been in the Guardians of the Galaxy, you could even have to fight with numbers. But to a man, Snart and his prison break buddy would make for an interesting fight with I assume Drax. I have no idea who Groot pairs off against, and I assume then that it becomes Rip Hunter versus Star-Lord. And I gotta tell you, I don't like Rip's odds in that fight. And as they say, the captain generally goes down with the ship. So I think Marvel has a stable of characters that can hold off the overwhelming numbers and sarcasm of Snart long enough that Star-Lord could dispatch of Rip. But I'll tell you what, though, the numbers thing would make it interesting. And I'm not 100% convinced that Gamora would beat the White Canary. It'd be one of those, if Marvel and DC ever squared off again, that would be, because when they did the old Marvel versus DC back then, they picked their most popular characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now you'd probably see Gamora versus like the White Canary because both of them are major in film, but yeah, Groot's kind of a game changer, dude.
He is, I think he is the difference maker. Like he's the X factor. I think. I think he would be the reason why the Guardians would win. It would certainly be an interesting matchup. I think just because the Legends does have they have a I guess variety of heroes. You have Firestorm, you have Captain Cold there. You got the White Canary. You got
I forgot about Adam.
Yeah, Adam too. I was just about to mention him. Yeah.
I forgot about Adam, who can shrink in, but it's not exactly like a lot of them are rocking tech like Tony Stark, where he becomes super useful. Yeah, I just think that, I mean, Yondu and his damn whistle arrow, that thing in and of itself is going to be awfully hard to compete with. So I have to take the Guardians on
the Guardians. I mean, I think I'd have to go. I'll agree with you there.
But I'll tell you what, though, man, I think to a man, Legends would come out with some victories.
Oh, I think it'd be close. I do think that, but I mean, I think Guardians has a slight edge.
Probably. All right, questions. You guys are finally starting to get the hint here, and A. Vasquez wants to know. I really can't understand why they passed up addressing the O-line. Take it away.
I mean, if you just listen to what Snead and McVay said after the draft, I mean, they got a Pro Bowl guy in Andrew Whitworth who hasn't aged. His best years have come the older he's gotten. It seems like, so they're set at left tackle, at least for this year. Inside, you have guys like Jamon Brown and a veteran like Roger Saffold. Center, I think they if they were to draft an offensive lineman, center would have been the position, and they may regret passing on one just if Sullivan does get hurt. But then, I mean, you do have depth with Havenstein also playing guard, and we'll see what Robinson does. But Snead and McVay seem to at least want to give these guys a shot under Cromer.
Yeah, pretty much. That's, I mean, they have guys. The moral of this is that if you ask and you talk to insiders, the Rams like guys that they want to try out. They want to see how they work. They want to see if their investment pays off. And, you know, some fans may not like that, but at the end of the day, it really is kind of being smart, at least about your business. The last thing you want to do is get rid of a guy and then he goes somewhere else and all rolled. So if it's any consolation, though, Mr. Vasquez, I'm right there with you. I can't believe they drafted a fullback over an offensive lineman. But all right, so Joe Marciano goes, does John Johnson have a legit shot to start at free safety this year? He may be a better fit than Joyner. I'm going to go ahead and say that in a new coaching regime, every position is open for with the exception of Goff, who pretty much has an ownership mandate that he gets his crack at it. Yeah, I think everyone has a shot. I don't know whether or not he's going to supplant a guy that understands the system within a year, but I could easily see a scenario whereby he replaces Joyner halfway through the season after he's come to terms with the defensive expectations.
I could see him. I could see him starting probably not day one, like you said. Maybe until he gets a feel for things, getting some reps on special teams and getting the reps in practice. But the thing I don't like about Johnson is that he's not a good tackler. That was a huge weakness on his, and he covers well, but he's not a tackler. And I mean, if you're gonna be a free safety, that's something you're the last line of defense. If a running back runs up the middle, you're the last line of defense. Or if a wide receiver is gonna run past a guy like Jermaine Johnson is the last line of defense there. So not being able to tackle, if he can improve there, I think he can start.
All righty. So Joe also wants to know, he says Josh Reynolds may be the first true number one receiver that the Rams have had since Holt. Thoughts?
I think just hold your horses on that one a little bit. Pump the brakes. The guy hasn't taken a snap in the NFL yet. But I mean, you can see the high upside there. He's some of the catches on his highlight reels are just incredible. He can blow the top off a defense. If McVay can coach him to run routes and expand his route tree, I think there is some potential there to become a solid receiver. Maybe not a number one, but certainly somebody that can complement Woods until they can bring in an actual top guy.
I think that at the end of the day, too, it's ultimately going to come down to what he's able to pick up of the offense, how quickly he can learn it, and whether or not he's able to gain the separation in the NFL that he got in college. I know that separation's a big key for this Rams team in 2000s. Well, it will be the mandate under McVay to try and gain separation from your guys, get some yards after the catch, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a chance that this is the first true number one that they've had. But I could also see Cooper Kupp emerging into that role and somehow or another taking over, if you will,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Cooper Kupp has the best chance for success, but it also depends on where they do end up putting him. Is he a slot guy? Is he a guy that they put on the outside? If he's a guy that the Rams put in the slot, then I mean Johnson is, I think, the top guy that plays opposite of Woods, so therefore he's going to get the reps early, and that could be beneficial on his part.
All right. Bate wants to know, why did they go and draft the one player I specifically asked them not to? They just wanted to piss you off, dude. That's really what it comes down to. There's no other way to go about this other than the fact that they hate your guts. They think you suck, and they were like, who does Bate not like? Draft that guy. Like, they would have had you send in the card, but they yeah, I would say they lost your number, but we both know they threw it away when you gave it to them.
I tend to agree there. They just have to spite you, Bate.
All the pre-draft banter that the Rams had no picks left from the Goff trade was short-sighted. They had 1 second, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, 8 picks total. True and untrue, the Rams did trade there to acquire picks in the middle that obviously improved their stock. But I think it wasn't so much the lack of picks that they had that I think people were talking about. It was the lack of picks in spots that are critical to getting players who can contribute right away. Like, it's one thing to have pick number 169. It's another thing to have pick 69. You want to have picks inside those first top 100. You want to be able to grab one of the top 100 players in the NFL. So, those first 3 rounds, those picks are extraordinarily valuable. And, the Rams could have used more in there. 4 players, you have to count on a lot of those guys being successful. You have little room for error with some of the guys that they picked. So, but I still like the class. That's the thing. I actually like the class. I don't think they screwed it up in any way. So I'm excited to see how the class plays out.
I agree. I think if it was any year to not have a first round pick, this might have been it, just because this draft was so deep. But like you said, they probably could have used that number 5 overall pick. The Titans take a big wide receiver like Corey Davis with the 5th spot. You could have taken a safety like Jamal Adams, who's a game changer on defense. Marshawn Lattimore, you could have drafted him to replace Jermaine Johnson next year. These are just – they miss out on the premier talent, I guess. They got some solid talent there in round 2, but if they would have had that 5th overall pick, that's where the premier talent is, and that's what they miss out on.
All right, Mark Essa finally wants to know, does Mel Kiper stand by his A- grade of the Rams 2014 now that the team has declined the Robinson on option? I'm going to say he still does. Mel Kiper doesn't strike me as the type of guy who revisits things and goes, you know what, I was wrong.
No, I mean I agree there. I think he's a guy that stands by it. But I still think I think he stands by what he initially said. That they drafted Robinson, who was at the time he was an offensive tackle with a lot of upside. And I mean that was the pick there. But I mean I think if you were to revisit that, I do think he would change his mind.
I don't know if he would. These guys seem to be locked in on things once they set their mind to it. I think Mel Kiper would blame the Rams' development of those players rather than assume that he was wrong. So with that, we're going to go ahead and bring the show down to a close. You can follow Blaine on Twitter at bxgrissack. 1993. 1993, excuse me. BX Grissack 1993. That's GRISAK. You can follow me on Twitter at the much easier Fight on Twist, FIGHTONTWIST. And as always, it's important to follow the site, SB Nation's home for the Los Angeles Rams, Turf Show Times. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have anything, let us know. We'll talk about it. We're trying to increase the amount of audio and multimedia that we're doing here. So this stuff's all for you. Let us know, and we will be back next time here on Ram It Down Your Throat.